From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm one of the original Boys of Summer, also known as Jamie Hickson.
And I'm Eric Rosen. How are y'all doing tonight?
We are so happy that you could join us this evening. We're basically winding down the month of July, which means the trading deadline in baseball is exactly 1 week from today. And that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as what's going on. So we're hoping that you could call us up so you can share your thoughts at 718-727-0143. In case you miss any episodes, you can catch them on our YouTube page and our show's Facebook page. And you can also check us out on Twitter and contact us on Instagram and Snapchat. And since it's the last full week of July, that also means that training camp in the NFL has basically just gotten going. And I would say a week from Sunday is when the first game is going to be played, and that's going to be the traditional Hall of Fame game.
Which is really amazing that we're at the beginning of the road to Super Bowl 52 in Minnesota. So all these teams are gearing basically to get started on the road to Minneapolis. Now, what teams are going to be projected? Let's preview the AFC East for a bit right now. Starting with the New York Jets. As we know, last year they did go. They had 6 wins last year. Actually,
5 wins last year. They were 5-11. Bottom line is, last year was a complete and unmitigated disaster.
15-17 for Todd Bowles in his 2 years with the team. The fact that in the offseason they let go of some of their big veteran players like Brandon Marshall, who now is playing for the rival Big Blue New York Giants. Eric Decker released to the Tennessee Titans.
Eric Decker was not really a shock that he was released because, quite frankly, he couldn't stay on the field that long for the time that he was with the Jets. And the same can be said for his entire career. Everywhere he's been a concussion waiting to happen.
Actually,
but now,
more arm issues than concussion issues. He had an arm issue last year. And I'll be honest, too, yes, that was part of the problem with his arm. But I think the fact that he was put so much pressure when he came to the team as a number one receiver, when really, quite frankly, he's a 2 or 3 at best. Now, at least when he goes to Tennessee, he won't have that pressure like he had with New York. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy for him. At the same time, I'm sad.
He'll be a really good complementary receiver for Marcus Mariota to work with. Now, as far as the Jets are concerned, it's literally out with the old and in with the new because they're building with a bunch of young players on this roster.
At least 10 rookies, from what I understand.
10 rookies. Right now, probably the one player to look at that can give them some hope this year is their second-year guy, Leonard Williams. Did you know that Leonard Williams led the Jets in sacks last season? And he was a rookie. He had 7.5 sacks last year, which is not a great season for him. It was a good season, but it just goes to show you how painful it was to see the Jets not even try to mount a pass rush against opposing offenses last season.
Well, Sheldon Richardson's going to have to step up this year.
That's another thing. Who's going to stay and who's going to go? Is it going to be Sheldon Richardson who's going to make his home with the Jets for the rest of his career? Or is it going to be Muhammad Wilkerson?
I think, honestly, Richardson is going to be the person I think will step it up. I think Wilkerson will be let go after this year is out.
At least the Jets are trying to build with a little bit more defensively because they picked Jamal Adams, a defensive back, number 6 overall, which was a pretty solid pick for them. Now let's see if he can work well with that, with the rest of that secondary. And also, let's see if the Jets can mount a little bit more of a pass rush this year. It's not like they don't have the players. The players are there.
How about an offense, for Christ's sake, too? That's the thing.
And also trying to mount an offense.
This could be the point where, for Christ's sake, but really, it pisses me off the lack of offense that we've seen.
This could be the time where the Jets start to feature their ground game a little bit more with Bilal Powell and also with Matt Forte. So That way they'll be able to take a little bit of the pressure off the young quarterbacks that they have. And that's another thing.
They have a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
this
they
year,
have a
John
new
Morton,
offense.
who is more of a West Coast style spread offense.
But who's going to be the quarterback that's going to be taking the signals from John Morton? Is it going to be Christian Hackenberg? Is it going to be Bryce Petty? Or is it going to be
concussion?
The guy that they signed off the scrap heap, which is
Josh
McCown.
Again,
which I thought was a dreadful move. The guy has done nothing everywhere he's gone. He's had, he's played 14 seasons in the NFL. He's had maybe one good year.
At 38.
And he's never even played in a playoff game before.
I know. Again, not to knock people in their 30s. After all, we've seen people like Peyton Manning in that age range play successfully. Right now, Tom Brady's about to approach 40 August next week. But the fact is, this guy is concussion walking on two legs. So right now, honestly, he'll probably get the start because he's the veteran. But then we're going to be holding our breath to wait. Unfortunately, it's messed up for me to say it. When he does get his eventual concussion, because that's what he's been doing in his career, we're going to be wondering who's going to take over for him. Who's going to be the backup? That's the real question. Who's going to be the backup? Is it going to be Hackenberg or is it going to be Petty? Honestly, between the two, I think it will be Hackenberg.
It should be Hackenberg. He waited patiently last year in his rookie season. Now it's time for him to get that baptism by fire. Put him in at least 3 preseason games. The Jets have their annual preseason showdowns with the Giants and the Eagles, and I think they have a meeting coming up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, the Giants are the ones that are going to be playing the Steelers in their preseason opener. The Jets have the Lions. They have the Detroit Lions in one of their preseason games.
They have some promising young guys, though, which I'm happy about that they drafted. Jordan Leggett, the tight end from Clemson, I think could be the first pure tight end we've had in a while. And then you look at this other guy, Ardarius Stewart, who came out of Alabama, too.
Yeah.
So that could be a very good receiving option right there for the team.
They better hope so, because Quincy Enunwa is not necessarily my idea of a go-to guy. And Austin Safarian Jenkins, who basically has been tooting his own horn to be the number 1 tight end, let's see if he can put his money where his mouth is and actually produce in this what's going to be a long season for the Jets.
Nauseating.
In fact, ESPN.com has already said that it's 277 days before the NFL draft. That's the storyline for the Jets right now. The major storyline should be who's going to be the quarterback, and also, are they going to be defiant and not tank this season so they can get that automatic number 1 draft pick, or are they actually going to try and win some games?
Here's the theme song.
Well, I would hate to think that they're going to intentionally tank the season, because if they do, then shame on them. Because last time I checked, the idea of playing sports in the first place is to win. Not to be afraid to lose or to intentionally lose.
Morris Claiborne, that's going to be, I'll be honest, it's intriguing and also worrisome too with him. He's being brought on a 1-year prove-it deal at cornerback because after all, we did let our cornerback go, who's been with us for so many years from Pittsburgh. Yeah.
And have you seen the schedule that the Jets have this season? In addition to their division rivals, they have to play Atlanta, Carolina, New Orleans, and Tampa. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in their schedule. If I'm not mistaken, I think they also have to play
Oakland the second week on the road.
Yeah.
With Derek
a
Carr.
Place where they have never, ever won a game in franchise history. Maybe once or twice they've won a game in Oakland in their entire franchise history.
The first 2 games are on the road, in fact. They're in Buffalo, then Oakland. They don't come home till week 3, the 21st, when they play the Miami Dolphins. So let's go delve more in the AFCs. We go from the bottom of the barrel to the top of the heap. That is the New England Patriots, the current reigning, defending Super Bowl champion New England Patriots, who in this past Super Bowl against Atlanta came back from a huge deficit and took advantage.
And the big question regarding the defending champions is, what could they possibly do for an encore? And I'll tell you what, give them credit for never, ever resting on their laurels. This is one franchise that always seems to get better the year after they win a championship.
Look at the additions they made.
One of them being Brandon Cooks, which I thought was a brilliant move for them to get in the slot.
Dwayne Allen at tight ends to complement Gronk, if Gronk is even healthy enough. That's the thing. I hope Gronk will actually have a 16-game season for the first time in, I can't even recall the last few years where he's played all 16 games, whether he's had a shoulder injury, a back injury. I'm just hoping he'll be able to play. And the other intriguing thing is Jimmy Garoppolo. You know, right now, don't be shocked to hear his name in terms of trade deals.
Yeah.
I think there are going to be teams possibly trying to make a move to get him.
Although I'm not really sure it's such a wise idea to just up and trade away the guy. I mean, Tom Brady is approaching his 40th birthday. Who's to say that he's not going to suffer that one catastrophic injury that's going to prematurely end his career? That's number one.
He hasn't had an injury since 2008. That was the year, in fact, the only time, other than the Patriots, that another team won the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins that year.
Yeah.
When he had the injury in the Kansas City game.
Other than that, the Patriots have won the last 8 AFC Eastern Division titles and 15 of the last, I think it's 15 of the last 16 that I know of.
And how about this? On top of all the players we mentioned, how about on defense? Coney Ealy they made a move for, and they signed the #1 cornerback on the market, Stephon Gilmore, from Buffalo to a $65 million 5-year deal.
Poaching from within the division. That's how a championship team is made. As far as the other 2 teams in the AFC East, or as I like, the Finns wound up making the playoffs last year, which was such a major step up for them, considering who their quarterback is. It's Ryan Tannehill, and he's coming off a season where he wound up suffering a debilitating injury. So now the question is he going to be 100%? And number 2, can the Dolphins actually get back to the playoffs and try to go a little bit further in the AFC portion of the postseason?
That's true, especially their running back that they have, who came from the Broncos at Boise State. You know, he was really exciting to watch last year. He had several 200-yard games, in fact. But Tannehill is always going to be the question. I think this is the year where he's really going to have to step it up. Otherwise, the Dolphins will be looking elsewhere if he doesn't have a successful season. And I like the move that they made, letting Brandon Albert go to Jacksonville, and they got a nice tight end in return, formerly, of course, from Denver.
As far as Buffalo is concerned, the question is still the same. Sean McDermott is now their head coach now, and he's going to try and turn this notoriously downtrodden franchise into a real serious team to consider in 2017.
How about making the playoffs? 17 years they've been without a playoff berth.
Here's another question. Are they ever going to get a real quarterback? Sorry, but this whole thing of Tyrod Taylor is just not doing it for me. And E.J. Manuel is finally gone. He was a complete and utter bust. So who is going to be the guy to lead the Bills to a postseason game, much less the promised land?
Remember T.J. Yates? He's on the depth chart.
Brother.
Nathan Peterman, the 5th-round pick out of Pittsburgh. And then you got Cardell Jones, who was a 2016 4th-rounder from Ohio State.
Wow.
But Cardell is more of your running – he's honestly a running back than a quarterback in the NFL. So you need to put him opposite, of course, the big running back, LaShawn Shady McCoy. Does he have more gas left in the tank this year? That's the other thing, too. And on the offensive line, Eric Wood, I don't know if they're going to really keep him around considering he's got $3 million coming in this year. So, and defensively, with Gilmore gone, they lost that's a huge hole on the left side, their cornerback situation. So there's a lot of things to worry about with Buffalo coming to the season, but it's going to be intriguing. Now, let's go to the AFC North. We got the Steelers, of course.
Defending division champions.
If it wasn't for that last play by Antonio Bryant, against Baltimore on Christmas.
Yeah.
That was a huge turnaround game for them.
The big question surrounding the Steelers, though, are they ever going to give Le'Veon Bell a new contract?
I think they should, considering he's given them over 1,500 all-purpose yards. He can run like hell north and south. He can catch out of the backfield. He can give you 15, 20. He can give you 15, 17 touchdowns each year. This guy is lightning in a bottle. Why would you want to let this guy go? He is your besides Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown, one of the best receivers in the league. Why would you let Le'Veon Bell go? That's just beyond
Here's another
stupid.
question. What's going to be of their defense?
Well, right now you got old River, 39-year-old, and I mean James Harrison. I'm sorry to say that, but this guy can play. I know maybe I shouldn't have said old man River, but I'll tell you, for an old guy, he's better than half the defenders I've seen around the league, and he plays good fundamental defense.
He's also had a reputation for being one of the dirtiest players in the game, but that's a story for another day.
And not only that, another Watt joins the family business. TJ Watt, the outside linebacker from Wisconsin, was drafted in the high 30s, or was it 29th overall last year in the first round. Now, is he going to try to up the ante, get one over on his brother JJ? And here's the kicker. They play each other around Christmas. So that's going to be a fun family.
Good family reunion right there.
I cannot wait to see that matchup.
Yep.
Mom and Dad, hide the china. The boys are fighting.
As far as the rest of that division, it's basically a fight for who's going to be the second best team in the division. Is it going to be Cincinnati or Baltimore? Baltimore and Cincinnati, they're pretty much set at quarterback. One guy who's a Super Bowl winner, another guy who has carved out a decent career, but just cannot seem to win that big playoff game. And last year, the Bengals were a complete disappointment. So much so,
6-9-1.
So much so that they missed the playoffs entirely. The Ravens this time, I think this could be a real turning point in John Harbaugh's career.
Danny Woodhead, they signed in the offseason, and he's another do-it-all-purpose running back. He's not the flashiest, but he can get you some yards when you need it. And then you got J-Mac, who they signed as well to be in the receiving corps. Now that Steve Smith Sr. finally is retired from the league, and it's sad to see him go. But my question is, Brashad Perriman, will we finally see that breakout year we've wanted to see from him since he was drafted out of Central Florida?
As far as Cincinnati is concerned, what can the Bengals possibly do to try and make things better for this coming season? They had a really important draft, and it looks like they're going to want to get younger, not just for this season, but for beyond. Joe Mixon was one of the guys that was the focal point of their draft, and Mixon is someone who has had a rather checkered past. He's really got to be on his best behavior if the Bengals want to do anything this season.
An over 2,000-yard running back right there. This is somebody he's another lightning in the bottle, north-south back that's going to be complementary with Gio Bernard and Jeremy Hill in that three-person tandem. They could be the best running back tandem in the league next year, I'll be honest. As for John Ross from Washington, 4.20, 40-yard dash, best ever. When you get a guy that can run like that, like you mentioned before we went on the air, you cannot teach that, in the words of Enzo Mori. And you can't teach that, and you definitely can't teach what John Ross does.
Yeah.
He's going to be, with A.J. Green, they could be a deadly receiving combination in the AFC North.
And as for the Cleveland Browns, this question is obvious. Are they going to win more than one game this year?
I think they will. Honestly, I think it's intriguing to see. It's another quarterback situation, but I think they're going to be 10 times better than what the Jets are going to have. Yes, I know. It's a bit of a laugh because you got Brock Osweiler, 3 teams in as many years.
By the way, the Jets and the Browns play each other this year.
Cody Kessler.
Don't be surprised if you see that game end in a tie.
Oh, please. No.
Here's question 1A, though, and this is being serious. What kind of impact is Myles Garrett going to make? He was drafted first overall by the Browns. He's expected to be a superstar for them down the road.
He's going to be yet another impact, like another Jadeveon Clowney coming off the edge. Somebody that has like I said, he's got 37-inch wingspan.
Mm-hmm.
He's
And he's got a veteran defensive coach, Greg Williams, who's going to be tutoring him this season and possibly beyond. So that's a pretty good guy to try and learn from if he wants to be the next great defensive stud.
like Aaron Donald he worked with, who's one of the best, who's still with the LA Rams. So really, he is somebody to definitely learn from, just not from what he did with New Orleans with Bounty Gate. That is not something he'll hopefully not be teaching anymore, but he does have that aggressive physical style defense. And with the guys like Ray Mulaga and some of the other gentlemen on that defense, Mulaga is with the Bengals, sorry. But with the Browns this year, the defense is going to thoroughly improve, especially on their rushing defense, which has been in the 30s and lower the last 3 years. So Cleveland, I think, is going to get 6, maybe 7 wins this year. Now,
That's being kind, especially considering that this is the Browns we're talking about.
AFC South right here. You got DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry in Tennessee. You know, another great running back tandem.
I think this could be the toughest division to try and make heads or tails of because there are potentially 3 promising teams that could take the South this year. You got Tennessee, you got Indianapolis, and you got the defending champion, which is Houston, all of whom have major question marks.
I think there's even some intrigue with Jacksonville. Yes, I know. It's a bit of a laugher yet again, but hear me out.
Jacksonville, I think, is going to be a lot better this year. You know why? Leonard Fournette.
Exactly.
He is the guy. He's going to be the guy coming out of the backfield this year, which means one thing.
Less pressure on Blake Bortles.
Exactly right. Plus, who's going to be the number 1 guy in the slot for Blake Bortles to throw to?
Well, you got a bunch of people. You got Allen Hurns. You got the Allens. Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson right there. So you got the 2 Allens right there. They got Brandon Albert to be at their left tackle position. They haven't had a true left tackle in years. Maybe he'll be back to the form he was with Kansas City before he left to go to Miami. And then as for Leonard Fournette, he's taking pressure off a guy, Blake Bortles, who's had a career less than 60% completion rate. That's sad right there. And 63 turnovers in the NFL since he came to the league. That's another thing that he really has to improve on. Because if Bortles doesn't, because you got Chad Henne and Brandon Allen. That's why he's got to do better, because you do not want either one of those guys taking snaps on their center.
And I'm going to tell you right now, if Blake Bortles stinks, that's going to set the Jaguars back another 2 or 3 years maybe. But that's the questions regarding Jacksonville. Is Blake Bortles ever going to make anything out of his career? Now, as far as Tennessee is concerned, they surprised some people last year, winning 9 games. Marcus Mariota really grew by leaps and bounds last year. He had a really good running game to work with. Now he's got Eric Decker to throw to. The question is, what is Mariota going to do for an encore? And also, how much mileage is left over in that 2-headed backfield? I know Derrick Henry has a lot of mileage left on him.
And Derrick Henry has plenty, and we have yet to see, I think he's going to get to his full potential this year. I think he's going to I nominate him for the breakout player of 2017. Now, for Logan Ryan to switch from New England to come to Tennessee, because he already won his championship with New England. Now he wants to come and maybe help another team out. So he's going to be a huge help with Jonathan Cyprien. Again, a team that poached people and all that within the division. Tennessee poached a Jacksonville secondary within the division. And then Harry Douglas. He's sort of like he's in that bubble to look at for next year. Who knows where he's going to be at. As for Andrew Luck and the Colts, Andrew Luck's health is numero uno.
That's the major question. Well, that's the $1 million question that the Colts have to ask themselves. Is Luck going to be able to play all 16 games this year? That's question one. Question two, how much more does Frank Gore have left? Number three, is that offensive line ever going to do anything to try and protect Luck and Gore? And number four, what is going to be of that defense? A defense that has done nothing for 2 years now.
they got 13 players through the draft and free agency this past year. So this is something to look at because Chris Ballard, the new GM, who's on the team right now, I think really made some strides this year. Now for Chuck Pagano, I think he's going to be on the hot seat this year if things don't work out.
Finally, the Houston Texans. They've won the last 2 South Division titles. This is probably, well, there's 3 questions to ask of them. 1, is J.J. Watt going to be healthy? 2, who's going to be the quarterback? 3, after 2 consecutive division titles, is this the time where we look at the Texans as a real threat for a Super Bowl appearance coming out of the AFC, or are they just another flash in the pan?
Well, let me answer the quarterback situation. Right now, we have J.J. Watt. They gave up 2 first-round picks to move down to get him out of Clemson. That's huge right there. Then you got Tom Savage, the veteran player. So between the two of them, Bill O'Brien, I think, will most likely go with Deshaun Watson coming out of camp. He's going to be their number 1. And that's huge for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who had only 954 yards last year and 355 completions, receptions last year. So I think this is going to be a benefit for Hopkins. He could have another breakout season, sort of an Antonio Brown Jones season, if you ask me. As for what was the other questions you are they J.J. Watt's health? That's the problem this year. 3 games into 2016, he re-aggravated the back injury from last year's training camp, and that's why he had to sit out the rest of 2016. I think that is going to be something to monitor right now. So I don't think they're going to try and ease him into the situation. Since he came to the league in 2011. He's had 76 sacks, leading the NFL. He's had 3 back-to-back 20-sack seasons in his career.
More importantly, 2 back surgeries.
I know. Let's hope that
Let's hope he has a really good chiropractor who can keep him on the up and up. But with 2 consecutive division titles having been won, they finally won a playoff game last year. Is this the time to call them a Super Bowl contender, or are they just another flash in the pan that we should just discard?
But let's keep in mind, when they beat Oakland, they were on their 3rd quarterback in as many weeks. It wasn't Derek Carr who they were playing. Yep. If it was Derek Carr, I think that game would have been a whole different scenario right there. As for the potential of them getting far as a championship, there is potential right there. In their running game, Deonta Foreman, an in-state person from Texas, if he can stay out of trouble, not be such a schmuck and all that, I think can really have a great season. Now, Dwayne Brown, the veteran left tackle, that is a tenuous situation right there at the blind side for whether it's Tom Savage or Deshaun Watson taking the snaps. Either way,
if you ask me, Deshaun Watson should be the quarterback, hands down.
Now, as for the AFC West, because we always like to head west, the Raiders right now gave a big multi-contract, $25 million contract per year deal to Derek Carr.
The same Derek Carr who had his knee mangled just before the Raiders made the playoffs last year.
Which is a $125 million contract extension. So he really needs to step it up. Connor Cook, had a little taste of what was going to happen next season. Austin Howard on the right tackle position, that's something to really watch out for. It's going to be – but Marshawn Lynch, that coming out of retirement to want to be a Raider –
and play in his hometown of Oakland. It's a good thing that he's doing this now as opposed to 3 years from now when the Raiders supposedly make their move to Las Vegas, because from what I understand, things are on shaky ground between the Raiders, the city of Las Vegas, and the stadium commission over there. But that's a story for another day. That's one question. How much does Marshawn Lynch really have left in the tank now that he's back in the game after a year absence? 2, is Derek Carr going to be 100% healthy?
That's the thing. That fibula injury right now is something to look at. They're going to probably ease him in training camp, not get him working out too much at the beginning. But at some point during the training camp season, they'll definitely put him in some games, as they usually do in the first 3 games. The number 1 starting players usually play like 1 quarter in the first game, a quarter and a half in the second, and a full half in the third. They never play them traditionally never play their starters in the fourth and final game. That's usually for like second, third tier guys who don't know if they even have a spot. As for the rest of the league and mistakes, of course, how about the Chargers making the mistake of moving from San Diego to LA? But it's not like they were given a choice. The people of San Diego didn't vote for them to get a new stadium. So,
which begs the major storyline regarding the Chargers. Does anyone in Los Angeles even care? I mean, X's and O's and personnel are one thing. Does anyone in LA care?
This is a team that's only won 9 games the last 2 years. Their running back situation was better last year than it was in 2015 because their running back from Wisconsin couldn't buy a touchdown in 2015, but yet in 2016 had a good season. As for Anthony Lynn coming in as a new head coach, could he be the first coach since Mike McCoy to make the playoffs? Possibly in his first season. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I would like to see what they can do this year. But it's just 6 out of the last 7 years, they've missed the playoffs.
And here's a story that epitomizes the Chargers' complete incompetence in their franchise history. What is going to be their home for the next 2 or 3 years before the new stadium in Inglewood, California is ready for business?
They got a soccer stadium right now.
The Home Depot Center.
Yeah. In California, I think that's like
Carson, California, which, if I'm not mistaken, seats about 25,000 fans.
And the other situation, too, is the offensive line in terms of protecting Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers is not getting any younger, folks. Mm-hmm. He's getting up there in age, and he has not, had a chance. Remember, when him and Manning were drafted, same year, and Rivers was first going to be a Giant, and Manning was going to be a Charger. Then they made the switch off, and look what has happened for each of them. Manning has won 2 Super Bowl championships, 2 MVPs in both of them, and Rivers has not. Maybe a playoff appearance or 2. Other than that, he hasn't had much success in terms of the postseason or Super Bowl like Manning has. So this year, the offensive line has got to do a better job protecting him. Otherwise, things are really going to go haywire. And Keenan Allen, at that ACL tear he had in the opening game last year, could he have that breakout year?
I know he's waited a whole year to get back on the field.
Patrick Mahomes II going to Kansas City to challenge Alex Smith for the starting job.
How long before we see Patrick Mahomes II take over for Alex Smith behind center? And also, what did the Chiefs do for an encore? They won the AFC West last year, but were a major disappointment in the playoffs. What must they do in order to get to that next level?
Well, they got Tyreek Hill, who had a breakout season as a rookie, the do-it-all player that can run, catch, everything out of the backfield, the next Le'Veon Bell, if you will. So he's going to get more receptions. He's going to get more involved in the playmaking for sure for either Alex Smith or Patrick Mahomes, whoever starts. As for Jeremy Maclin no longer on the team, that's where other receivers like Chris Conley and some of the other guys are going to have to step up to fill his shoes.
Right.
As for the defense itself, I think they're always known for their tough, aggressive defense and that 34 style that Andy Reid has. So I think they're going to be successful. As for the Denver Broncos, Paxton Lynch, Trevor Siemian, who starts?
You got 2 really young guys that have pretty much been tabbed as 1A and 1B as far as the starting quarterback. Why do I get the feeling that this could be the time for Trevor Siemian to really grab this thing by the throat and assume the job for himself? Because I'm not really sure about Paxton Lynch as a future quarterback. Not just for the Broncos. The physical tools are there, but does he have the football IQ?
I think it would some time and all that. I think he will have the football IQ. But right now, I'm thinking Siemian, with the 14 games he's started already, he'll probably get the nod as the starting quarterback for next year. Now, in the NFC East, you got the Redskins. The number one question, I think the only question that's on the minds of every Redskins fan, will Kirk Cousins have another year in the Redskins uniform? And I know that's an offensive word. I'm sorry, folks.
You know this contract situation has been dragging out for over a year now. If they can't come to an agreement, then why not explore some kind of deal where they could get something in return for him. You mentioned this before the broadcast. I don't think anybody wants to pay $30 million to have him be a one-year rental, basically.
Yeah, they're not going to pay the franchise tag money, which is, of course, the average 5 contracts of the top 5 quarterbacks at that position, and you round it off for that 1 year. And this is the second consecutive year that the Redskins have done this to Kirk Cousins. There's no way that Kirk Cousins is going to stay on this team if they keep, messing with him in terms of this contract situation. So, he's either going to go to McVay with the LA Rams or possibly to the San Francisco 49ers with Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, someplace where they really, really need a quarterback who can help them win now.
And 2 guys that Cousins has worked with in the past. Because McVay, let's not forget, was last year's offensive coordinator in Washington, and now he's got the job with the Rams. So he knows McVay's playbook by heart. And even though they got the kid from California on their team, whatever his name. Anyway, the fact of the matter remains, I think San Francisco is going to be his destination next year. So look out for that. And they did get Terrell Pryor and Josh Doxson.
Yeah.
They have them in lieu of losing out on Pierre Garçon, who's now with the 49ers, and Jackson, who's actually with Tampa Bay, which I can't believe. He's a Buccaneer, but nonetheless. So they lost some players, but they might have gained, but who knows if that's going to help. Now, Carson Wentz, in his second full year as starter, he's got some new weapons added to the
Yeah, could this be the year? That's the question surrounding the Eagles right now. Could this be the year that the Eagles make a really serious threat at a playoff spot? Because even in spite of his growing pains in his rookie year, Carson Wentz showed quite a bit of potential, and he's got a lot more weapons to work with this time.
Oh, yes. He's got Alshon Jeffrey. This is the guy who we're waiting to see, the Alshon Jeffrey that was drafted by the Bears out of South Carolina. I think that's going to come out. Another guy who's going to have a great breakout season, because the fact is he needs to have a good year because, again, this is a 1-year prove it or nothing else deal. And you got Torrey Smith, another veteran receiver from San Francisco, coming in here. And then LeGarrette Blount, who just won a Super Bowl last year with 17 rushing touchdowns for the New England Patriots, to add some oomph in that running back, because Ryan Matthews is an injury waiting to happen.
Yep.
So they needed some punch, and they got some punch.
As far as the other 2 teams in the division, those could be the teams that, quite frankly, battle it out for the Eastern Division title. The Cowboys and the Giants.
Ooh.
The major question regarding the Giants is, well, there's actually 2.
Can they get more points? Because they had 19.4 points per game last year.
Yeah, can they score? If they're going to score, they're going to need a running back. Who's going to be their running back?
Paul Perkins?
Is it Paul Perkins? Is it Orleans Darkwa, who actually showed potential in games past?
Wayne Gallman?
Maybe Wayne Gallman, who they drafted? Or is it going to be one of their other guys, the fourth string guy? And also, what's going to be of their offensive line? Because they made a couple of picks in the draft to bolster their offensive line. And there's also the matter of the tight end. The Giants drafted this really promising tight end out of Mississippi, who they're going to try and make their number 3 receiving threat behind
Evan Ingram.
Yeah, Evan Ingram, who could potentially be a number 3 receiving threat behind OBJ and Brandon Marshall. Here's another question regarding the Giants.
That's the
Is
thing.
OBJ going to be on his best behavior this year?
Oh, do you mean is he going to stop going on Miami super boats like he's on, like he's a member of the cast of Miami Vice and trying to show off his shirt, his muscles like he's in the middle of a Calvin Klein shoot? I hope that's the case, because honestly, that crap cannot stand next year, especially when you have to prepare for a tough game against the Green Bay Packers. That instead of preparing, he decided to pull off that crap, and guess what? It didn't help them in Lambeau, where they usually are pretty successful in the postseason against Green Bay. So he's got to stop with this nonsense. And Brandon Marshall, I think this is the last stop of his comeback tour, because if things don't work out with him, if he doesn't stop being that cancerous person that there are times he can be, if he doesn't stop that crap as well, I don't think he's going to make a postseason ever. He's never made a postseason. You're talking about Chicago, Miami, you know.
Chicago, Miami, Denver, where he got it all started. 2 years with the Jets. Here's another question with the Giants. Eli Manning is 36 years old now. He's close to the twilight of his career. Who's going to be the guy that's going to take over for him? Is it going to be Davis Webb, who they drafted from California, or is it going to be, perish the thought, Geno Smith?
No, Geno Smith will probably most likely be the backup, but this is what he'll be doing.
Reading the clipboard.
That's basically what he's going to be doing all year because Manning has not missed a single snap since he came from Mississippi.
Since he became the starting quarterback in 2004.
From Ole Miss. There's no way that Geno, believe me, he's even going to, for the sake of Giant Nation, he's not going to get hurt and have this atrocity take place. Now, left tackle, that's my main question. Eric Flowers or is it DJ Fluker? Who will be the starting left tackle?
Yep. And as for the Cowboys, they won the division last year, but there are two main questions that I have about them. One, is Ezekiel Elliott going to be on his best behavior? Because he got in trouble again. And two, what can they do to improve that defense? Because they got shredded really badly in the playoffs by Green Bay last year.
And in free agency, they lost a lot of guys. Like Brandon Carr, Barry Church, Morris Claiborne, J.J. Wilcox in their secondary. They lost into retirement Doug Freed to retirement and Ron Leary on the left guard situation. They still have Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick, and Zach Martin. The best tandem on any offensive line. That's why Ezekiel Elliott had over 1,500 yards last season and was the best running back in the league, not just as a rookie, but overall as a player. As for Dak Prescott, only 4 interceptions last year altogether and over 20 touchdowns.
Yeah, this time defensive coordinators are going to game plan much more long and hard against Dak Prescott to try and force him into the so-called sophomore jinx this year.
And let's see what happens. In the NFC North, the Vikings right now, in the post-Adrian Peterson era, this is going to be Latavius Murray and Dalvin Cook from Florida State. Yeah. Dalvin Cook, who has the most yards in Florida State history.
Yeah, he has the potential to be a real star in this game. But the big question regarding the Vikings is, well, in addition to who's going to be the heir apparent to Adrian Peterson, is their quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, going to be healthy the majority of this season?
No way. Considering what he went through last year, he was this close from his career ending. There's no way the Vikings are going to rush him back. That's why they made the trade and moved to get Sam Bradford. And right now...
Who did nothing last year, except make them a 500 team, barely.
Yeah, but you know what? I think Stephon Diggs is a good receiving complement to help him. And Adam Thielen. Laquan Treadwell has to have an improving season. He has to be that speedy wide receiver that they got out of Ole Miss. He has to really show the team why they gave him the benefit of the doubt. Otherwise, don't be shocked if he's shown the door. Now, as for the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers without Olivia Munn. Let's see how he does this year.
Yeah, can he get over his breakup? That's a personal question for him. But a question for the Packers is, one, are they going to keep some of their best defensive players? Well, are they going to keep some of their best players on each side of the ball healthy? That's number one. Number two, who's he going to hand the ball off to? And three, what to do about the secondary, because they got their butts kicked by the Falcons last year.
How about the contract situations with Devontae Adams, who's one of his reliable receivers? Clinton Dix, sorry.
Yeah.
And Corey Lindsey. By the way, that was, of course, Nelson from The Simpsons.
Yep.
But that's contract situations that they have to look at in terms of giving them extensions for their contract. Kevin King, though, that's, that was a pretty good pick right there. Let's see what they can do with that. As for Demarius Randall, Quinn Rollins, and Darius Gunter, those guys are going to have to do some magic this year in that secondary. So that's a very tough question. Now, the Detroit Lions on the Jim Caldwell.
Sorry, but I couldn't help but chuckle right there. to their credit, they managed to sneak into the playoffs last year, and this was without Calvin Johnson as their main guy, which begs the question: are they ever going to get over Calvin Johnson retiring on them? Now we know that part of the reason why Calvin Johnson retired was because he knew the Lions were never going to be a contender in this sport. That's number one. Number two, what's going to be of Matthew Stafford? Because as tough a guy as he is, he's had 8 NFL seasons. The time for him to show that he can be an elite quarterback in this game is now. But is it going to be in Detroit? But is it going to be someplace else?
It's going to be in Detroit. I think he still will be in Detroit. It's a matter of the coaching situation. Jim Caldwell is probably going to be on the hot seat this year, along with Marvin Lewis and Todd Bowles. You know, those coaches, right? And Chuck Pagano. Jim Caldwell is going to be on the hot seat this year to see if things change, because he was this close when they got the new GM, and they still kept him around. So he really has to get their first win since the early 90s. Otherwise, you know, things are really going to change up, if you know what I mean.
By the way, do you know that this marks 60 years since the Lions last won an NFL title? Do you know what their history consists of? The 50s. The 50s are when they had their really, really dominant teams. They won 3 NFL titles in the decade of the 50s. After that, that franchise has not even tried to know how to get out of their own way. And it's also been 60 years where they've won 1 playoff game. Sometimes I feel really sorry for that fan base because they really, really deserve better.
How about feeling sorry for the Bears fan base right there? 9-23 under the John Fox era so far, and now they're betting the farm on Mitchell Trubisky out of North Carolina.
They're betting the farm on a guy who basically had 1 full season at North Carolina. It was just a very, very, very frustrating draft pick that the Bears made. And this begs the question: who's even going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Trubisky, or is it going to be the guy that they gave all that money to, Mike Glennon?
I think Mike Glennon will probably get the start right now because of the fact that he's a veteran, and that's loosely veteran and all that. Only like 9 starts in his career. So I think he'll probably get the nod, and Trubisky will be the backup watching. But at some point during the season, I wouldn't be shocked if they switch things up and put Trubisky in a game. As for the running back situation, that at least is one good thing to look at. Jordan Howard, who had the second most rushing yards as a rookie behind Ezekiel Elliott. So coming out of Indiana. So that was a heck of a game plan right there. As for the receiving situation, now that Alshon Jeffrey is gone and with the Philadelphia Eagles, Kevin White really has to step up.
And White has been a big-time disappointment for them.
2 separate leg injuries since he came to the league in 2015 as the number 7 overall pick out of West Virginia. So this is the year where he's really going to have to step his game up to help whoever is the starting quarterback. Mm-hmm. And the offensive line, too, has been no shakes either. And the defense, ugh.
You know, speaking of the NFC West, do you know that the Lions actually invited Calvin Johnson to training camp, even in spite of the fact that he's still retired? They still haven't gotten over him leaving. Anyway, let's go to the NFC South. Last year, the Falcons were the class of the NFC South, not only winning the division, but winning the NFC and being basically 20 minutes away from winning their very first Super Bowl. But then they completely self-destructed in what may be the single greatest choke job this side of the Houston Oilers. Here's the $10 million question for the Atlanta Falcons. Can they get over their hangover from last year of blowing the title?
I think they're going to have all the players that they had from last year's team intact. That's really good right there. Mm-hmm. And with some new additions like Tak McKinley, he was going to really make some noise on that defense. That punch that they really lacked last year on the defensive line. Desmond Trufant, though, their cornerback, their cover corner has got to be healthy, too. That's another thing they were missing in last year's Super Bowl, is a guy that can really stay toe-to-toe with the top receivers. Mm-hmm. As for Julio Jones right there, I think we're going to be expecting just as much as we can from him, as he's always given to Atlanta, especially the fact that they're debuting their new stadium this year.
Yep, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and that stadium looks really, really nice right now. And for the record, the old Georgia Dome I think it's already been torn down now to make way for a parking lot. And Turner Field, where the Braves played, that's going to be the new stadium for Georgia State University's football team.
At least they're going to make good use out of those places. Now, as for the rest of the division, Cam Newton and the Panthers, that's
the $64,000 question regarding the Panthers. Is Cameron Newton ever going to grow up? That's number one. Number two, who is going to be the guy that he's going to hand the ball off to take some of the pressure off of him?
McCaffrey.
Yep.
That's who he's going to
Christian McCaffrey, a guy who can basically do it all. He can take the handoffs and catch the ball out of the backfield and also return kicks.
Which is really something. He was an all-purpose. Remember years ago when he lost in the Heisman Trophy battle in 2015, he had over 3,000.
Some people thought that he should have won the Heisman Trophy award
Instead of Derrick Henry that year. But, I thought he should have won it too that year. He did everything and then some. But you know what? Derrick Henry had a great season as well, for Alabama.
Well, as much of a dimension as he's going to add to them offensively, who are the Panthers going to look to defensively to try and help them get some big stops in a big situation?
Well, of course, their middle linebacker, should be back this year.
Luke Kuechly, of course, because he had some major problems with injuries last year. Now, there's also the matter of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They made quite a few improvements last year. We already know that Jameis Winston is the man. The question is there still more room for him to grow? And also, what weapons will he be able to work with?
Well, you got, of course, Mike Williams on that. You got Mike right there on the wide receiving core, along with Deshaun Jackson. So you got, and then Howard, O.J. Howard. This was the guy who, in the 2015 national title game, had over 200 yards for Alabama when they defeated Clemson. So he's going to be a good receiver, a good blocking receiver, and a tight end. He is going to add another dimension to that offense. Now, the muscle hamster, Doug Martin, if he's able to play, who knows? Because you got Charles Sims and some of these other players right there that give me concern. And then Nick Folk is actually going to be competing with Robert Aguayo for that kicking position. That's going to be another thing to look at right there.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see what happens. And Cameron Brate could add some punch too.
Finally, there's the Saints. And I think you and I have the same question in regards to the Saints. How much longer does Drew Brees have left? If you saw the way he played last year, the way he was just slinging the ball around as if he were playing a game of darts, I would think that he would have another 3 or 4 good years left in him. But there's another question.
How much gas does Adrian Peterson have left in the tank?
That's another thing. Adrian Peterson signed with the Saints to take pressure off of Drew Brees. So you're going to have a rather old backfield of Brees and Peterson. But there's also the question of the defense. The defense was just lousy last year.
I know, and that's the thing. Like, you got Donnell Ellerbe and Manti Te'o right now. Manti Te'o, folks, who had, the situation years ago when he came into the league. But, right now, I think he can grow in the city. I think Manti Te'o will actually make the roster. As for Marshawn Lattimore, that's going to be an interesting pick at 11th at cornerback right there. So I can't wait to see what he does. And Mark Ingram, I think, will have another spectacular season for the Saints. And this is a Saints team that has let go Jimmy Graham and Brandon Cooks in 2 of the last 3 years.
Yep. Finally, the NFC West. We all know that the Seahawks have been the class of the NFC West each of the last 5 years. I guess the only question regarding the Seahawks is, can anyone even challenge them from that division?
Well, here's the contractual situation. Both Jimmy Graham and Cam Chance are entering the last year of their respective deals.
And there have been trade rumors in regards to Richard Sherman, too.
Because of the fact that, he's advocating right now for a lot of players to strike. there's the thing. He's really advocating that the players actually have the power to get the owners to bend to their will.
You do realize why he's doing this, right? Because those guys are insanely jealous of all the money that the guys in the NBA are making.
Yep. So I'm hoping that it doesn't end up with a strike shortened year or the threat of a strike or anything like that. Because that's the last thing for us fans to want to see that happen. As for the team itself, I think Seattle, I think, might actually have a downturn of season because the offensive line has been always a question mark for me lately. Mm-hmm. As for the Arizona Cardinals, 7-8-1 last year, and you still got two guys entering what is the twilight of their career, both Larry Fitzgerald and Carson Palmer.
Carson Palmer more so than Larry Fitzgerald. Carson Palmer's approaching his 38th birthday in December. How much more does he have left?
And you got Drew Stanton and Blaine Gabbert as the backups.
Drew Stanton is okay, but Blaine Gabbert, I don't even know why he's in the league right now. He has been a complete and utter flop.
So, other than that, and let's see what John Brown does this year, too, for the team. And of course, their running back that they have, their all-purpose David Robinson, who really is over 1,500 yards. He's really going to be the focal point of that offense. Aaron Donald contract could be the huge storyline coming to the LA Rams camp. And are they going to win more than 4 games this season? Plus, is Jared Goff really going to be able to grab the reins of the quarterback position, because they made him a number 1 pick for a reason? And Sean McVay coming in as the new head coach. Let's see what he can bring to the table. And as for the 49ers, are they going to win more than 2 games this year? And also, is there anybody on the 49ers to watch for? Well, let's see and find out. Now, just in rapid-fire news, Jordan Spieth, of course, won his 3rd major championship at the British Open in Royal Birkdale yesterday with a huge 12-under shot and a huge 30-foot birdie putt. So congratulations. 3rd title in 3 years. He's 1 championship away from a career major. Could he do it at North Carolina at the PGA Championship? Battleground last night. Jinder Mahal retained his WWE title in the 3rd ever Punjabi prison match, defeating Randy Orton with the return of the great Khali. After a 5 to 10 year absence? Congratulations to see him back. I'm kind of happy. It makes it even more fun to watch that tandem. Now, Chris Froome winning his 4th Tour de France championship yesterday. Since 2013, 3rd consecutive overall. Congratulations to the British cyclist. LeBron James, of course, we're hearing that he's not going to trade his no-trade clause. He's refusing to waive his no-trade clause, but we do know who wants out of Cleveland. It's Kyrie Irving, and he's already mentioned the Spurs, Heat, Timberwolves, and Knicks as the teams that he would accept a trade to. I'll give him a hug if he ever comes to Knicks. At least the Cavaliers were able to get themselves a new general manager. It's Kobe Altman. And there's rumors about Derrick Rose. He's had meetings with a whole bunch of teams, the Cavaliers, the Lakers, even his hometown Bulls, about a reunion in Chicago. And we'll see how that takes it. Casey Kahn winning his first NASCAR championship, the Brickyard, in 3 years. As far as baseball is concerned, the trading deadline is exactly 1 week from tonight. The Yankees already made their big move, getting Todd Frazier and David Robertson from the White Sox for a real package of players that included Tyler Clippard and 3 minor league prospects. At least the Yankees were able to save face in their road trip, taking 3 out of 4 in Seattle over the weekend. Including that blasting home run by Aaron Judge that nearly left the park. The kid's a beast. As for the Mets, they wound up taking 2 out of 3 at home from Oakland, but I just had this feeling that they probably could have done a little bit more. Now they've got a 10-game road trip coming up. They've got San Diego, Seattle, and Colorado on their road trip coming up. And the Staten Island Yankees so far, 22 victories and 11 losses on the year. And Dom Thompson-Williams having a great offensive week. And good news for some people, good, not so good. O.J. Simpson was finally paroled after 9 years in prison. And he's going to be released as early as October. So with about 20 seconds left, let's just wrap it up as we speak. We want to say thanks to Kenny Graham on the other side of the glass, and thanks to you guys for watching at home. So for everyone here, I'm James. And I'm Eric. Go United States against Jamaica Wednesday. Win that Gold Cup.
See you next week. Good night.
Peace.